right, so it is now noon, so we're going to get started today. I want to welcome everyone to our virtual Lunch and Learn program, Protecting the Lands We Love for Future Generations. Our speaker today will be Emily Wilke. She's the Conservation Projects Manager at Southwest Michigan Land Conservancy. But before I turn it over to her, I want to introduce myself. My name is Ellen Holste. I'm the Community Program Manager at Pure Cedar Creek Institute. So as I said, welcome today. Most of you, I believe, are aware of what the Institute is and what we do, but if you are not, we are part Nature Center, part Science Education Center, part Nature Reserve, as well as part Environmental Field Station. We have 829 acres of diverse ecosystems, 9 miles of hiking trails, and some of those 829 acres are in a conservation easement. So with Southwest Michigan Land Conservancy. So it's a great thing to have them on our team. And our mission is to inspire appreciation and stewardship of our environment. So as I said, our speaker today is Emily Wilke. She's the Conservation Projects Manager at Southwest Michigan Land Conservancy. And welcome, Emily. I'm very excited for you to share your knowledge with us today.
Yes, thank you for having me. This is my first presentation in this format, so I hope you find it entertaining, informative, and be gracious to me. So I am the Conservation Projects Manager for the Southwest Michigan Land Conservancy. I've been with the Conservancy for almost 15 years, helping people conserve their land. And I actually live in Berry County, down by Prairieville. So today I'm going to tell you about Southwest Michigan Land Conservancy, what a land conservancy does, how we conserve land, particularly more information about conservation easements, and then I'll give you a case study of sorts and tell you about a story of the last conservation easement we completed in Berry County. And then at the end, I'll just tell you about how the Land Conservancy is going to prioritize lands that we protect moving forward. A land conservancy is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. There are local land conservancies that cover a small area, such as Chickimine Open Lands just covers a portion of Berrien County. There are regional land conservancies, such as the Southwest Michigan Land Conservancy. We cover 9 counties of Southwest Michigan. Above us is the Land Conservancy of West Michigan, and to the east of us is the Mid-Michigan Land Conservancy. There are about 50 land trusts in Michigan. Every county in the state of Michigan is covered by at least one land trust. And there are about 1,600 land trusts nationwide, conserving over 50 million acres. So you hear the term land trust and land conservancy. Those two terms can be used interchangeably. It's the same thing, a land trust, a land conservancy. And then there's also the Nature Conservancy, and they're a global organization. And most people have heard of the Nature Conservancy, but sometimes the local land conservancies get looked over. But yeah, so the Southwest Michigan Land Conservancy covers the 9 counties in Southwest Michigan, like I said. It's an area about the size of Connecticut. Here's a close-up map of our counties. And the yellow dots are lands that we conserve through conservation easement. We have over 100 conservation easements covering 12,000 acres. And then we also have preserves, 56 preserves covering about 5,000 acres. All total, the Land Conservancy has conserved just over 17,000 acres in Southwest Michigan. And you can see, looking at this map, that a lot of the land that we've conserved is in Berry County. That's been the county where we've done actually the majority of our work. And then there's also this patch in northern Kalamazoo County where we've done a lot of projects too, around the Gull Lake, Augusta Creek area. So we are, as I said, a 501c3 nonprofit. We were established in 1991. We have 10 professional staff and over 100 volunteers. We're governed by a board of directors, and we're supported mostly by members and also some grants. Particularly, we apply for grants to do some projects. And there is a picture of our beautiful staff. I miss these people. We are still all remote, and it looks like we might not be in the office again until spring is our current plan. Staff lunches are always very entertaining, so yeah, miss that. Our mission is to conserve the scenic and ecologically important landscapes now and for generations to come. We have different focus areas. One of our focus areas is protecting the Mitchell-Cedar butterfly. There are only 15 populations of this little brown butterfly left in Southwest Michigan and Northern Indiana. We've conserved or owned the land where 4 of the populations are reproducing. There are a couple of the other populations have also been conserved in one way or another, but we are going to do what we can, apply for grants to further conserve and restore this butterfly's habitat so it does not go extinct. Well, that's our goal. We also conserve open spaces and scenic byways. This is a picture of a series of properties that we own along Blue Star Highway out in Covert Township. We conserve farmland, both fruit crops and row crops. Here is a picture of our the Fen Valley Vineyard that we have a conservation easement on. We conserve inspirational landscapes like our Wakena Preserve. It's our largest preserve, and it's on Lake Michigan, and it doesn't have quite as much beach right now as this picture is showing, but it is a beautiful place to go and take a walk. The Land Conservancy also works on restoring land that we own, that we've either purchased or has been donated to us, and that is through prescribed burning, invasive species removal, plantings. We have a crew of 3 women right now that are out on our preserves full-time every day taking care of those properties, and countless volunteers that help them as well. And we also connect people with nature. So we're doing what we can for education. Our Bow in the Clouds Preserve is actually part of it is in the city of Kalamazoo, the Nazareth Road. The nuns donated the property behind the convent to us, which is also the land that's now behind Borges Fitness Facility. And it's a really nice place to go for a walk. There's boardwalks, there's wetlands, and there's an overlook, and there's some logs laid down for kids to play on. It's one of my family's favorite places to go for a walk. And then there's also Portman Nature Preserve that we own. That's out near Matawan. That's one of our newer preserves. It has one of the populations of Mitchell-Cedar butterflies. This is actually our only property that's open to the public that has Mitchell-Cedar butterflies on it, because the property is large enough that the public use is separated from where the butterflies can be found. This property has 3 lakes on it, and also another boardwalk and wetlands and hilly trails through the woods. So it's a great place. And there's Matawan School District in previous years, the last couple of years, has had school groups come out on a regular basis to use that property. And then last but not least on this slide, we have our Porter Legacy Dunes property in Pilgrim Haven. And this is a property that we own also on Lake Michigan, just south of the city of South Haven. It's my family's favorite place to go on Lake Michigan, because even through this summer when there wasn't much beach, there was still some beach to play, and not a ton of people. So it's a nice place to go to Lake Michigan. And yesterday, we closed on the purchase of 48 acres adjacent to Pilgrim Haven that we called Porter Legacy Dunes, that we've been working for the last year or a couple of years actually to raise money to complete. So that got done yesterday, and now Pilgrim Haven and Porter Legacy Dunes, which are right next to each other, protect that whole section of critical dune, forested back dune, and frontage on Lake Michigan. So land protection options. There's some different ways that we work with landowners to conserve their land. In the previous slide, I talked about preserves. So that would be land that we've either purchased or has been donated to us outright that we own. And the other option that's very common is conservation easements. And I'm going to go into more detail about conservation easements. Sometimes we also have money to purchase conservation easements. So there's either donated conservation easements or purchase of development rights, which is also called purchase of conservation easement. Those terms are also the same. If you hear me say either one of those, that means the same thing. And then some people want to do a conservation easement or conserve their land, but it doesn't happen during their lifetime, but they can set it up in their will or their trust to make sure that happens when they pass. Conservation easements are flexible. They are a legal contract that the landowner and the conservancy sign that's attached to the deed of the property and runs with the property in perpetuity. So the landowner knows that that land is going to be conserved forever and the Land Conservancy is going to look after that property. The easement is written using the Michigan Model Conservation Easement, which that's all the Land Conservancy of Michigan use the same model where they base the model conservation easement, that's the basis of it. And then we tailor the conservation easement to the property and to the landowner's future desire for the property. And the land will remain private. It is not open to the public. And the protection is permanent, as I said, it runs with the deed. So that the next landowner is still going to need to be abiding by that easement. And the Land Conservancy makes the commitment to come out to the property every year to look after the terms of that easement that was set between the donor and the Land Conservancy. And pictured here is our Brewster Lake Conservation Easement, which is on the Pierce Cedar Creek Institute. That is our largest conservation easement, and it is so great that we can work with the Institute in that way. Benefits of a conservation easement. Why do landowners decide to do this? The majority of people we work with, they want to see their land conserved. They love their land. They've known it or it's been in the family for a long time and they don't want to see it destroyed. And so that's the majority of people we work with, is that's their main goal, is just knowing their land is conserved forever. It's also a nice way to leave a legacy. Some of our properties, they have easement signs like this, and you can name the property after a loved one. And then there are also tax benefits that go along with doing a conservation easement. The federal income tax is figured out by an appraisal. So an appraiser will come out to the property and they'll appraise the property at its highest and best use. So what it would be like without the property conserved, how much is it worth? And then with the conservation easement restrictions put into place, how much is the property worth then? And you're going to see a decrease in value, and that decrease in value is an income tax write-off. And it can be taken up to 15 years, carry forward, and it's calculated based on your income and tax bracket. So that's just an added benefit of doing a conservation easement. It's not a lot of people's main driver, but it definitely is a benefit. And there are also property tax benefits. The biggest benefit is in the property tax category is there's a Michigan law that caps property taxes when an easement is put into place, so that when it transfers to the next generation, the property taxes can't raise any more than 5%. We have a lot of people come to us that say, oh, I inherited this property, I wanted to keep it forever, but the property taxes jumped and I cannot pay them anymore. Can you help us? And I just say, no, I'm sorry. I could have helped you before that happened, but now that they've raised, I cannot help you. In some circumstances, if you put a conservation easement on the land, you have an appraisal showing that you've devalued the property by taking the development rights away, and you can take that argument and that appraisal to your local assessor and see if they will lower the property taxes. This happens in some of the cases, not all of the cases, so it's not a guaranteed thing because it's based on the local assessor's opinion. Pictured here is our Cedar Creek Conservation Easement, which was donated by Al and Jean Gemrich, and it's downstream of Pierce, Cedar Creek Institute, conserving 200 acres. So steps to completing a conservation easement. So if you were interested in a conservation easement, how would you go about doing that? Well, you would contact your local land trust. So if you live in Southwest Michigan, that would be us. And just have a phone conversation about what you're interested in. And then if it looks like you want to move forward, we would set up a visit where the staff would come out and take a walk and discuss how you would want to conserve your property, different land conservation options. And if it looked like things were going to be moving forward, we would have the volunteers come out to evaluate the site, and we would draft a conservation easement, work with the landowner to draft an easement. And eventually the land protection team, our group of volunteers, and our board of directors reviews every project. The board of directors has final say on what projects we complete. And if the project is approved, then we'll go through the process of doing a title search, taking care of any title issues that arise, such as a mortgage subordination. The appraisal will be completed. And then we'll complete also a baseline documentation report where we document all the property, just everything. We take pictures all over the property. We document soil type, trees, all different species. So we do a complete report of the property at the time the easement is put into place, or the time the land is conserved. And then once all of those details are together, we will sign, notarize, and record the easement document to attach it to the deed of the property. If the landowner is taking an income tax deduction, then at that time we'll work with them to help complete the 8283. If you wanted to work with the Land Conservancy to conserve your land, I'd have to say that it would take at least 6 months to a year. Thankfully, we have a lot of people that would like to conserve their land, and we have a list. So you just kind of get in line, and we work on it as we work on projects as staff capacity allows. So so it's not an immediate thing. Usually we're working with landowners over a series of years, just because it's a forever decision, and you want to make sure that the kids or the next heirs all agree that this is what they want to do, and that we're making restrictions on what can and can't happen on a property. And so you just want to make sure that anything you might want to do in the future is written into that document. So it takes a lot of thinking, a lot of processing. And usually it takes multiple years before the document is signed. So when we're designing our conservation easements, we separate a property into different areas. This is one of our easements down in St. Joe County, but it's just an example. So here's a agricultural area, and that land can continue to be used for agricultural purposes, and we'll designate that as such. Then there's this natural land along the edges and along Portage River, and that land would be designated as natural, where it's just pretty much hands off. You can have walking trails, you can remove invasive species, but pretty much just left natural. And there's also another designation we have that's called managed woodland, and that would be where somebody could remove timber off the property with quite a bit of restrictions on that, but it's just another potential allowable use on our easement properties. And then up in this corner along the road here, there's a building envelope. So we put building envelopes around the land that currently has structures, or in this case, there's no current structures, but the landowner wanted the ability in the future to have a house and barns on the property. So that's the area that's designated for future buildings. And usually within that area, we set a limit of how many impervious square feet can be in the building envelope. So such as you can build up to 20,000 impervious square feet within that area. And that would be the limit on future structures on the property. So, but yeah, so each of our easements are tailored to those properties. And this is from the same property, and you can see the picture of the natural area along the river. And then you can also see a picture of the agricultural field. And this agricultural field has, the farmer is very forward thinking. Is actually the farmer that we dealt with to do the easement. He owns the property. He doesn't rent it, I'm saying, so he owns the property, and he has large buffer strips. And he wanted to write that into the easement that the next landowners would have to continue to plant buffer strips if they farmed it. So that restriction is actually written into this easement. And just to share a story with you of the last conservation easement we completed in Berry County. George and Doris Leonard Shadeland Conservation Easement. George is also known as Bud, and most people in the town of Delton have heard of Bud Leonard. And both of these, this couple they were really philanthropic, and they gave a lot to the town of Delton. The Welcome to Delton sign is actually located on their property as you enter Delton along M43 from the north. And they didn't have any children, and they wanted to see their land conserved, and they gave away a lot of what their resources. They gave away a lot back to the community, and one of those things was creating a conservation easement on their land. So I have documentation of Bud contacting Michigan State University in the late 80s, early 90s about conserving his land. He started talking to the Land Conservancy in the mid 90s. And it was just kind of a conversation for a lot of years until, let's see, I think I started working on the project about 10 years ago in 2010, met with Bud, and we talked about conserving the land. And we wrote up a document. In the coming years, his mind didn't cooperate with him as well, and then he started to deteriorate. And it's really hard for people to make decisions. But we did put the conservation easement into his trust so that it would be enacted upon his death. And working with Sandy Barker, his trustee, we were able to complete the conservation easement in April. Amongst the pandemic, we were able to complete conserving this land, which is something that they always wanted to do. And the property, it conserves Wall Lake and Jones Lake and wetlands and farmland and scenic open space and forests and even a rare tamarack bog. I'll show you some pictures. So here is a view from satellite of the property outlined in black, and you can see it connects Wall Lake, Mud Lake, just north of Delton. Just another jewel in Berry County that we've been able to conserve. And the iconic white cottages along M43, everybody probably knows, has seen those cottages if you've gone up and down that road enough. So the new landowner who bought the property with the conservation easement in place is very great, and he's working on restoring those little white cabins. And yeah, we're excited to work with him into the future. This is a picture of Mud Lake, which is also known as Jones Lake, which then connects to Wilkinson Lake. Here is one of the trails on the property and part of the agricultural field. So yeah, it was just really great to work with them to conserve their land, and they just knew it was something they wanted to do, and so it's great to see that happen. So I'm happy to, at the end, I'm happy to answer any questions about that. And then I just want to talk a little bit more about the Conservancy moving forward. So we have a lot of projects that come to us. We act reactively, as in when projects come to us, we evaluate them to see if they'll fit into our criteria. But we also would like to act proactively, and that it would be like reaching out to people and with high priority properties, people that try to make sense of like where we want to conserve and prioritize moving into the future, because we can't work everywhere. There's a lot of beautiful land in Southwest Michigan, but we only have 10 staff, and we do make the commitment to look after this land forever. So it's a big financial responsibility. So to prioritize land looking into the future, my coworkers have been working on a modeling process. They're calling it Nature's Network. And that's, it's looking at 3 different criteria primarily, and that's biodiversity, connectivity, and water quality. And knowing that the climate in this area is going to be getting warmer, they wanted to look at these criteria through the lens of climate resiliency. They mapped our 9-county area, splitting the area up into quarter-mile hexagons. And then each hexagon got a score with based on the criteria I just mentioned. And then they mapped out trends across the landscape and kind of grouped those high score areas together. And you can see in this map that the blue areas are the higher priority areas, the blue hexagons, when they ranked out as higher priority based on those criteria. And not ironically, Berry County, and even there's a portion of northern Kalamazoo County and northern Calhoun County, but that's the area that I showed in a previous slide that we've done the most work. So I think we're on a good track so far. And then looking at that data, we created biodiversity hubs, so where to focus our energy, and also corridors connecting those hubs. In this map, you can see the pink biodiversity hubs, and then also the multicolored corridors connecting those hubs to help us focus our efforts moving forward. So yeah, like I said, our goal would be to work within these hubs and corridors, be proactive, reaching out to landowners with high priority lands in those areas, and then also conserving hotspots that were identified outside those areas. So let's see, that is what I have prepared, but I'm happy to answer any questions. Oh, and definitely like us on Facebook. We have events happening, and you can check out our webpage for more information as well.
Thank you, Emily. That was very informative. I learned a lot. I don't see any questions right now, but feel free to type in your questions in the Q&A, or if you feel more comfortable using the chat, feel free to use the chat as well. I did have a question. I didn't know if you ended up doing any follow-up surveys. So you said you did a survey on these lands right when it was put into conservation easements. Do you ever do any follow-up surveys when you go back to these every year or anything like that, or does it need to be written into the plan?
Yeah, so our yearly monitoring visits were really just kind of checking up with the landowners, seeing if there's been any changes over the last year, or seeing if there's any plans for the following year. And so we're just kind of maintaining that relationship with the landowner, make sure those conservation easements restrictions are being abided by. Ideally, every 5 years is when we would want to do a baseline documentation report update. And that's when we would redo the survey and document what's happening on the land at that time. So we're a little behind on that, but we do them as we have time.
You've got a lot of property, so I understand.
Mm-hmm.
We did have a question come through. Do you have thoughts on types of habitat that would be of greatest interest, such as rare types of habitat?
Well, I mean, so I mentioned the Mitchell Cedar butterfly, and they live in prairie fen. So we are very interested in prairie fen habitat. In general, though, I mean, we're pretty broad scope. So if it has threatened or endangered species, yes, like that might boost the priority. But even if it doesn't, we do prioritize lands that are adjacent to already conserved lands. I would say that if it's not adjacent to already conserved land, if it doesn't have a threatened endangered species, if it's just like size of property, we'd want to go like 80 acres or above, just because we can't conserve everything that comes to us. We have to prioritize. So, but yeah, I think it's pretty flexible though.
Are there any other species that you focus on? Somebody was asking. So we know you're focusing on like the Mitchell Cedar, I believe the Carter blue butterfly as well, but are there any other species that when you know a habitat has that species, you definitely want to work on that project quickly?
Right, right. Well, the Massasauga. So with the threatened and endangered species, we have the ability to get grants, which is very nice for then follow-up for management. And also we've used those grants to purchase conservation easements and purchase properties. So it's just nice to be able to have that funding source to conserve land. So those federally threatened and endangered species, that federal source is available. I would just say that in general.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Another question we had come in is, do you have any big projects that are coming up that you are excited about?
Yes. Yes. So there's two projects that I'm working on closing by year end. And one of them is conserving more land in Richland Township, Kalamazoo County. I have a landowner that I've actually conserved over 1,000 acres with, and we're planning to expand that just to add another 54 acres they've purchased. And it's directly adjacent, so we can just kind of add that. So I am excited about that. I've really enjoyed working with this person and to continue conserving land. And it does buffer. It buffers the village of Richland. So it's growth-wise, it's kind of like creating a nice growth buffer. And so I'm excited about that one. And I'm also working with a landowner that's adjacent to the Berry State game area, and we're working on purchasing an 80-acre property that will add. It's adjacent to Audubon property, which is adjacent to the Berry State game area. So it's right up in that area and Rutland Township. And so so I'm working on that. I'm hoping it's going to work out, and I'm trying to conserve more land up there too in Glass Creek.
Awesome.
So.
Daniel asks, what is a typical tax advantage for an acre of wetland as a conservation easement?
Not much. Yeah. Because wetlands are not buildable. So, and particularly 1 acre. So the conservation easement is just taking away the ability to build, right? The ability to build. So if you had a buildable lot next to that wetland, then you're talking about some value for a conservation easement. But if you don't have any building site at all, I would say it's pretty low. If in general, let's say it's a 50-acre property and there's 5 acres of it that's buildable, I would probably say the wetland acres on that property would be worth about $500 an acre as far as a tax write-off.
So it might be
better. Buildable acres would be worth more, of course, and that would depend on the appraiser.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Fred asks, do you ever work with landowners to restore land to a natural state after it has been used for agriculture or industrial purposes?
Yes, we do. Particularly land that we own. So like we said, we have like 12,000 acres under conservation easement, and that's privately held. We encourage our landowners to do restoration work, and we help them get grants to do restoration work, but we don't spend our own funds on helping restore our conservation easement properties. However, if we own a property, so we own it fee title, then yes, we have converted, I don't know a number, but hundreds of acres of farmland to prairie. So yes, if it's land that we own, we do restore it.
Would you ever help them maybe find, I know there's grants sometimes out there to do restoration work. So even if it's a conservation easement, do you help them then find maybe those grants to help them do that work on their own property?
Yes, we do. Yep. And that's been successful. There's even like a national North American Wetland Conservation Act grant that then we've applied for that for our conservation easement landowners. And then there's some other state and other federal programs. So yes, we do that to help our conservation easement landowners.
Wonderful. So I know you have some properties, I think you were saying the Porter Legacy Dunes Pilgrim Haven property. I assume that one, you said that was publicly accessible,
Mhm.
correct? So we had a
Yeah.
question that said, do you have any publicly accessible properties that you think anyone would enjoy visiting?
Well, yes.
And if so, what are they? I will add to that.
Yeah, so I would encourage you to go to our website and go to our preserves tab, and then it will list all of the properties that are open to the public that have, you know, nice parking lots, trails, and it will also give you a trail map. So that's the best way to see all of the properties we have. I think it even gives you a little snippet about what makes up, like what you're likely to see on the property, if it's forested or if it's prairie or so forth. So so yeah, so I would encourage you to go to our website. And if you can't go to our website, if you want to give me a phone call, you could always do that too. If you don't have the capability to check out the website. But so yeah, so go to the website, go to our preserves tab, and you'll see all of the properties that we have public infrastructure on, and get a map.
Do you have a favorite, Emily, or a few favorites? I know like picking a favorite is so hard, but a few that you might recommend.
So hard. You know, our Joaquina Preserve, I showed a picture earlier in the slides. That one is really fabulous, and it's got a lot of frontage on Lake Michigan, so that it's really nice just to have that, like, that space to go for a walk. Granted, this summer there was not a lot of beach, but when there is beach, and you can just walk for a while, and you actually have to walk, I don't know whether it's a quarter mile or a half mile from the parking lot to the beach. So it really doesn't get a lot of use. So if you like walking, but you want to get out to Lake Michigan, this is a good place to go. I'm also partial to just what's local, what's close by. So for me, our Hidden Pond Preserve up in Berry County, it's on Otis Lake Road. That's a really nice place to go for a walk. And it's a prairie restoration where we've converted ag to prairie field. And we've actually also broke tile on the field, and it created this perched pond. So you walk up the hill and then you see a pond, and it's just really spectacular. So that's our Otis Lake Road Preserve. And then I mentioned Bow in the Clouds Preserve earlier, and that's, you know, that's pretty close to where we live too. So it's just a nice place to go for a walk. But it's hard to choose.
I know, it's like picking your favorite child. I get it.
Yeah.
Do you have any educational things that are coming up, or any events that are coming up that people should watch out for?
Oh, I was not prepared for that.
Sorry.
Yeah, check out our website, because it also
Okay.
has a list of our recent events right on the homepage. So
I know in these times it's sometimes hard, so I don't know what you guys have coming on right now, but
I know it's weird, and usually I would know because we're all in the office together and you hear everybody talking, but now it's just a weekly staff meeting for an hour, and that's just not enough to cover everything. So
well, I know you have done story walks on your properties in the past because we've collaborated with you on that. I know you've done some great programs out there. So if you're looking for programs, everyone also check out them. They have some great programs there too. So
yeah.
I don't see any other questions coming in. Do you have anything else you would like to add?
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. I learned a lot about conservation easements. First step, you would say, for conservation easement, if people are curious for their property, just remind us, what is that first step again?
Just give us a call.
There we go.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Give us a call. 269-324-1600 is our landline, and then you can disperse from there. So to choose me, Emily Wilke, or I cover Berry County. So, but then we have 2 other land protection staff that cover other counties in Southwest Michigan as far as helping people conserve their land. So, so if you're in Berry County, you can just call my line, or you can call my line regardless, and I'll direct you I'll give you the right person.
Great. Thank you, Emily, so much.
Yeah.
And just to remind everyone that's on the call today, you will get an email through Zoom. If you don't get that email tomorrow about the same time through Zoom, just shoot me an email, holstee@cedarcreekinstitute.org, and I will send you the recording of this. But I was going to send it out through that Zoom email. So if you don't get that, let me know. And thank you again, Emily, for being with us today and sharing your wonderful knowledge in all these great areas. So
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank
all
you.
right, thank you guys, and have a great afternoon.
See ya.
Bye.